Hi, I'm Ross Blum, and I beat the often path by accepting what's in front of me and trying to make the most of every opportunity that comes my way, whether it's good, bad, or ugly.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer, and on today's episode, we have a first. We've got somebody else named Ross on the show. What? Now, Ross Blum must be a pretty cool dude because he shares the same name as me. I'm only just guessing. Although, based on his accomplishments, I think it's actually more accurate to say that I share the same name as him. He's the president and COO of Skyline Robotics, makers of Ozmo, the world's first high-rise window cleaning robot. All those windows you see downtown, well, someone's got to clean them, and apparently it's a $40 billion industry. Skyline Robotics have already received millions in funding, and Ross has a meteoric rise to the top that I think you'll find really fascinating. He's innovated his way to success in an unlikely category, so there's lots of gold to be found in this episode. Now, it's still weird for me to say my own name about someone else, but I'll just introduce him one last time and hopefully get it over with. Here's Ross Blum of Skyline Robotics. Well, welcome to the show, Ross. It's the first time I've ever had to say my own name to a podcast guest or a person in general. I never come across another Ross. How rare is that for you?
I know we're a rare breed, Ross, and you know it's nice to be talking to someone you have the same intellect here.
And well, I wouldn't say that, as people will soon discover via your pedigree. I wish. I appreciate the compliment, but you too will have known what it's like to grow up in the shadow of Ross Perot, Ross Geller. Which person from Friends are you? You had to be Ross.
Life. Yeah, you know, when you're at camp.
Even though you're obviously more of a Joey or a Chandler.
Right, yeah, but like any Rachel that you meet, everyone's like, oh, like Ross and Rachel.
Oh, you gotta get together. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
We're going to put this.
I've been through that.
Hashtag Ross struggles, and all of the three people in the world will like that hashtag. High five from across the wire. But obviously, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. I'm super excited to share your story because of the twists and turns that it's taken. Also, you're working on a really cool project right now that's super relevant for not just where we are, but where we're headed as a species. And there are a lot of topics to get into along all of those fronts. So why don't you start with where you are now, and then we'll work our way backward into where you started from.
Perfect. So I'm the president and COO of a company called Skyline Robotics. Skyline Robotics was incorporated in 2017 in Israel. I joined the company on December 2nd, 2020, and officially have been here for 17 months now. So it's been a wild ride in terms of trying to reinvent this industry of facade access, starting with window cleaning. But one day at a time, you know, lots of fun people that we get to come across, meet, work with, and otherwise, because what we do is really differentiated. It's really special, but it takes a lot of work to change the way an industry works.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I love about doing this show is that I get to learn new words like facade access. Sounds very fancy.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, and I think we do have video here, you know, our goal with this company is to do what it says on my hat here. So we want to own the facade.
It says own the facade.
Yeah, so we're going to try to own the facade, which goes beyond window cleaning. And, you know, it's this sort of moniker that I think has resonated really well, like within our team. You know, beyond just being like, we're going to automate window cleaning and stuff like that. You know, the vision is bigger, you know, with this product. The vision's even bigger than the facade with what we can do with our technology.
Yep.
But we got to prove it every day, coming to work every day, hungry, humble, and ready to work.
Yep. Well, it's yet another thing, and I love this in general, businesses that nobody ever thinks of until it's mentioned to you, just as a casual person. You never think of window cleaning as a $70 billion plus business? Is that what your website said?
It can, on our website we have, or
market,
40,
I should say.
Yeah, so on the website we have 40. I've seen
40,
reports up to 65.
Okay.
So we didn't just pick like the highest number. You know, it's an industry that's candidly has lacks a lot of transparency in a lot of things that happen with it on a day-to-day basis. But if you just think about it, like, you know, every building in the world, whether it's a skyscraper or someone's home, typically is getting their windows cleaned. But it's something that, you know, as you mentioned, like no one really thinks about, but it happens everywhere and it's happening all the time.
Like once every 15 years, you see Neo climb out onto the balcony in The Matrix, and you're dimly aware that the only reason he could theoretically escape the building is because of window cleaners, and then it dips away for another 10 years, and we never hear about it. But
yeah,
big
well,
industry.
It's either Neo or Spider-Man.
Or Spider-Man,
one
right.
or the other.
Right. The physics-defying Spider-Man. But obviously it's scary, and that's the whole point. You're hanging from a couple of wires. It's scary. It feels dangerous, whether it is or not. It looks dangerous. Seems like people would have to have a certain amount of guts to do it. And according to your website, it's an aging population. The general window washer of today that is a human is over 40 years old, 74%, I think.
That's correct. So the statistics are that 74% of window cleaners in the U.S. are above the age of 40, and only 10% are between the ages of 20 and 30 years old. And I think that's really happened because if you put yourself in the life of a window cleaner, as you mentioned, here in New York City, you're hanging 1,000 feet in the air, doing manual labor. It can be anywhere from 40 degrees to 120 degrees outside, and no matter what, you've got to get the job done. And here, even in the US and specifically in New York, where we have really, really tight compliance regulations for work at heights, as it's called, unfortunately, some bad things still can happen. So we do envision this industry becoming a lot safer. And we get interest on that front, not just from the buildings and the clients, because it affects their insurance policies, but really actually the insurance providers as well. Are keeping a close tab on us and understanding how we're going to operate this stuff, more and more in the U.S. and how it can impact, how they approach the industry as well. So, this use case and this application not just touches the service providers who, provide the service at the end of the day, but the property managers, the developers of the real estate assets themselves, and, peripherally the insurance companies.
Well, it's a super fascinating industry. It's a super fascinating idea. And now let's jump back. So the business is very cool. Obviously the future, and we'll get into the implications of that. But you came from sports management. You've had a few twists and turns in your own career. And as you said at the very beginning, you followed these turns where they've led you. So where did your career start and how did you end up here? Is this at all where you thought you would be?
So I'll answer that first question. That last question first, which is no, this is not where I thought I would be. But let me take you through the story a little bit. And for me, it starts with Babson College, where I studied entrepreneurship. Babson was a pretty unique education from the standpoint that as a freshman, you're forced to run a business with your classmates. The school actually will the school will give you up to $5,000. And my class, or the half of my class that I worked with on it, started a grocery delivery service where our supplier was Costco. We called it Groceries to Go, and not everyone on campus had a Costco card. So we set up like a basic website, allowed people to make orders. I think we took about $4,500 from the school to get up and running. And anything that you make above sort of what you owe back to the school gets donated to a charity that you partner with. But for a whole semester, you're actually running a business with your classmates as 18-year-olds. And so working with the marketing team, working with the business people, working with the tech people on the website and stuff like that, it's a really unique experience, and one that I wouldn't sort of trade. So when I concluded my time at Babson, it was when sports rights fees for like the NBA and the NFL were just getting like astronomical. That was like when it was starting to be, just like $1 billion a year, to broadcast. And now I think we're at multiple billions of dollars a year. But I was like, there's got to be a way to create a business at this sort of like intersection of like TV and sports. And I was really passionate about sports. So I did go to Georgetown and get a master's in sports management. Wow. The outlets from that program, though, weren't necessarily what I was looking for at the time. So I made the decision to actually go to law school back here in New York City, and went to Cardozo here in New York. And in my third year at law school, I got to join what was called the Tech Startup Clinic. So for those who don't know, a clinic is typically how you can work with people outside of the school, giving them legal advice under the guidance of a professor or an actual lawyer. So we got to work with a bunch of founding teams, doing everything from incorporating, the very beginning stages of their entity, all the way through doing different types of legal research, drafting, different legal agreements, terms of service and privacy policies, and just fell back in love with this notion that people were like living, eating, sleeping, breathing, like what they were doing every single day. And I didn't have that same passion, sitting sitting as a summer, law associate, in a cubicle, like billing hours. So even though I had gone to law school and I feel like I use my legal degree like basically every day, it's a great way to sort of evaluate risk, in a number of ways. And that's one of the biggest things that I've taken out of that education. I knew I didn't want to go, sit in a cubicle for my life and bill hours. So look, I studied for the bar. I passed the bar here in New York. So technically I'm an attorney, here in the state of New York. But at the end of the day, I wanted to find my way into the startup world. And as a lawyer coming out of law school, most startups don't typically look for, young lawyers, to bring in. So it was actually like a little bit difficult to find sort of my first home. But eventually I was able to convince a company called PingMD to bring me on as a legal intern at first, and just help sort of like strategize with them, fix up their documents and stuff like that. My job as a legal intern, I think, lasted about 1 month, because they quickly made me a full-time employee and saw that I could do much more than, just doing some legal documents for them. So took over the sales team, took over the marketing team, and felt like we were starting to gain some traction. I joined the company about 4 years after it had started. I think investors had invested about $9 million in the company to that point. And then 10 months into my journey at PingMD, I got a call from the chairman saying, we're not really pleased with the performance of the company. Could you go and sell the company? And so as a 26-year-old with no experience doing this, but an entrepreneur at heart, looked at him in the eyes and said, of course I can go do this for you. So, had to learn a lot really, really quickly, but built the decks, found the potential buyers, got the team ready, got the product ready. And in about 120 days, we were able to get a deal done, selling to a company based out of Miami. And the board of PingMD was really, really pleased with the performance that I'd sort of given them. And we didn't get all of their money back, but it was a nice capital recovery deal sort of at the end of the day. And they all shopped me around to their other investments in New York City. So, went on a bunch of interviews, got a few offers, and decided to join a company called Quid. Quid, which still is a rare digital goods marketplace, was exploring this notion of digital collecting and digital ownership much before everyone knew what the term non-fungible token or NFT was.
Right.
So starting in 2016, this company was focused on this notion of digital collecting and digital ownership. I was brought on first in a partnerships role. So we wanted to we wanted to leverage other people's intellectual property in order to be able to market to users, bring them onto our platform, monetize the users, and then reinvest that, into more content for the platform. So we were able to get deals done with a lot of people: Marvel, CBS, Fox, Sony, Disney, Hasbro, the NBA, Major League Baseball. Got 325 brands on the platform. And again, sort of quickly started to rise through the ranks at Quid. And, first took over the creative studio, even though I'm not a creative, but, figured out some ways to create content a little more efficiently as we were going. Then took over the live operations team, which actually managed the live marketplace 24/7, 365. And then, we were able to do a nice big Series A out of a company called Sequoia Capital. And about 6 or 7 months later, I think I got promoted to COO to, oversee the day-to-day of the company. At that company, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the unit economics right. So the lifetime value of a customer compared to the customer acquisition cost, to really go out and get that nice big Series B. So once again, I was tasked with an M&A process. So we did sort of pursue that again. We got a few offers, for the company, and we decided to sell to a company called Animoca Brands, which is a blockchain gaming company out of Hong Kong. So that deal closed, 1 day before I officially joined Skyline Robotics as its COO at the time, and then more recently as its president and COO. But it's been a long journey to get here. And back to where I started, the kickoff of this podcast, to me, the thing that I'll always look back on is just being willing to accept an intern job somewhere, even though I had just gone through law school and I'm a lawyer here in New York, and sort of not being too proud of, what I had achieved academically to be able to pursue the things that I wanted, in my job.
So if I were a gambling man, I shouldn't place a bet on you, is what the moral of that story is, because clearly you are a sinking ship.
I wouldn't.
I mean, everything you've ever gone to, just whoop, straight to the top, just immediately right to the top. How does that happen? How do people notice that? And how have you sidestepped politics and any of external forces who might have wanted to keep you down, or that can often exist in these type of structures?
I think no matter what job you're in, you're not always going to love your boss, right? Like, there's things about your boss you may like, there's things about your boss you may not like. But at a bare minimum, you always have to satisfy your boss. So I've never said, no. Certainly I go back and try to parlay some things or make some changes to what I'm being asked to do. But then I've always taken it upon myself to just put in extra effort. So there's things that I believe should be happening at companies that weren't happening. And just because the management team didn't think that resources should be allocated or money should be spent in that direction, I never allowed that to sort of stop me from pursuing it. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of sort of extra work to pilot a lot of extra initiatives, that are happening. But I tell my team every day, like, you got to get the stuff done that we need to get done as a company. But if you believe in something, put the effort in, show me that you believe in it. Don't just tell me that, like, you wish we were doing that, you wish we were doing this. Make it happen. And there's nothing holding you back from making things happen. And I think that people get a little too, stuck in the mindset that if someone's telling them no, they have to accept that answer. The life of a startup, though, is constantly people telling you no. Whether it's pitches that you make, you go to investors, it's constantly people saying no. So, for me, people saying no is just part of a process. And I'll keep going, and try to drive through that door no matter what.
Well, it brings up, now we can talk a little bit about AI and the replacement of jobs and those aspects, big things that are at the forefront of the global conversation right now. So on the one hand, it's a dangerous job. On the one hand, saving human lives, of course, is a big deal. On the other hand, it's easy to imagine that if you've seen those documentaries on rock climbers, I imagine there's a lot of people who get a big kick out of hanging out on the outside of a very tall building in New York City by themselves, adrenaline junkies or whatever you want to call it. So we've got some people who are probably upset about the idea of losing any kind of job. And then we've got this other side, which is, how do we make things more efficient, collect data? How do we make them better? And that's the side that you're on. Some of this is, of course, inevitable. Some of it just seems inevitable. How do you think people should think about just what they might call AI taking our jobs, or robots taking our jobs as a general thing?
Yeah, look, it's a fair statement to like a good degree, but at the end of the day, the data is the data. So we talked earlier in this conversation about the age of window cleaners, the rate that people are signing up for the job, and unfortunately, there's still obligations to clean windows. And when you pair those obligations with sort of like the rate of new development of buildings, which in the U.S. In the last 10 years for buildings over 150 meters. That rate has increased 176% compared to the 10 years prior. And so you've got an aging workforce with no new people signing up and only more and more windows to clean. Right. So the only two solutions to the problem is that the service providers are going to have to start paying extreme amounts of money to be able to recruit people and then pass those costs onto the building themselves. So much higher costs for window cleaning, or there simply has to be a better way. But the way that we speak about our technology is about workforce augmentation. So we think that these guys who do go out on the side of the buildings, they're much smarter than they get credit for. They can handle doing more, being upskilled, and really operating in a safer sort of way. But at the end of the day, we still have a human on site on the rooftop because they're monitoring the system, as it's working. They're there, just in case anything happens, but really for compliance reasons as well. Like when the crane on the roof of a building is in use, you do need someone to sort of like be there from the safety standpoint. So we will never have 0 people, on site. But sure, the end goal is to have fewer people on site, giving them a really, really powerful tool to be able to complete the task, upskill the labor, and retrain them on this new way of doing it. And we believe that it would cause an increase at the rate that people would sign up for this job as well. So we actually think we could create more jobs, than are being lost essentially, because again, we still have people on site. We're not going from 3 people to 0 people. But, at the end of the day, that's the way that we view the world. I think that there's some fair statements that are made about AI taking jobs and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if it's an industry that people don't want to work in, and again, the data backs that up, whose job are we taking?
Yep. I don't know. I have not heard anything from the window cleaning community on this. I'm just assuming that somebody out there is, hey, you took our jobs. But yeah, it does seem like obviously the workforce is shifting and the types of jobs are shifting. The kinds of jobs that people will do are shifting, and fewer dangerous jobs, fewer menial tasks, more strategic, more managerial.
Yeah, 100%. But it's really to the statement that you just made. In the last 20 to 30 years, the educational diversity that people can actually get these days, and therefore the vocational sort of diversity that's available to people these days, much proliferated by tech companies, I got to say, because tech companies do everything. And now you can always find a company that's doing this niche thing that you always had like a passion about.
Anything you never thought of before.
Right. But the opportunities are, well, I could go, work at this thing I'm really passionate about, or I could go, hang on the side of a building and, work in extreme conditions, but still have to like get a job done. I mean, I don't think that this is that bold of a statement, but us as humans, we like to be comfortable. Like at the end of the day. And if you have a choice between a job that's comfortable, pays you the same, if not better, and you don't have to put your life at risk and think about your family, when you're going up on the side of a building, I think it's just an easier path for people.
Yeah.
And, it's just part of a trend. And we're just sort of seeing, observing, and analyzing that trend, and saying to ourselves, how do we fit into that picture?
Absolutely. Yep. I think that's true. And I think it's something that we all have to wrap our head around. It comes easier to certain people versus others. Some people think in terms of possibilities. Other people are more holding on to some mythical thing in the past in general. I find myself more in the camp of what can we do with the future. So I say let it ride. Let's just see where it goes. That's generally my approach. Let's just go for it and see what happens.
You should be our president.
Yeah, hey, I'll start as your intern, and then I'm coming for your job within 30 days. We know that that's possible.
All right, 100%.
But along those lines... Oh, thanks. Sweet. All right, bye-bye. I'm going to take off my microphone right now. Along those lines, people who want to find or leapfrog or kick around, move their way up the startup ladder or go from project to project or do any kind of thing like you've done, what are some signs? How does somebody find better projects to work on? I think we can start with the assumption that a lot of people are unhappy with their work. They don't like either the way it's done or, like you said, who they're working for. They may not like their boss, or at a fundamental level, I think more people than ever don't align with the mission of what their company is doing. They say, I don't care whether the company does more because it's harming the planet or it's just bad. Or how can somebody fastest get out of a situation and work that they don't like and get into something where they're more valued for their unique skills?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll start with myself and then sort of generalize from there. So, for myself, when I was like in law school, my goal at the end of the day was, how do I create a great life for my family that doesn't yet exist? And like, what am I willing to do in order to put myself in that position to feel like I've provided a great life, for my family? And so that's always like my motivation, even before I met my wife, even when I was still in school. I knew I wanted to, figure out some way to feel like I was successful. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy to achieve, even though if I'd gone to Babson, Georgetown, Cardozo as a lawyer here, none of those things guarantee any level of success. So, we're in a time frame in the world where a lot of it's sort of like, what have you done for me lately? True. And so, I always looked at myself saying like, I needed to come up with something every single quarter, of the year, being like, I want to spearhead something every single quarter of the year, because then at the end of each quarter, I would be able to talk to my boss and be like, hey, like, check out this thing that I did. Here's how it's going, stuff like that. But how do you come up with the ideas? I mean, look, it differs business by business, industry by industry. But I don't think that even for people that are unhappy with their jobs, they can't see that there are better ways to do things, or more efficient ways to do things, or different initiatives that, potentially they can try. I've spearheaded a bunch of things that even with the success I felt they had, I still didn't get, management approval to go along with it, at a bigger scale. But I was never going to stop putting myself out there. I never stopped trying, but it's really an attention to detail as well. So you can't just do a lot of things and have it be sloppy and messy. As a young person, you're always judged sort of by the work product that you produce. So it is going back and rereading, proof checking your sentences. If you're creating visuals or slides, like trying to make it as close to pixel perfect, like as possible as you're going, and just trying to show a level of care that candidly is more rare these days. And so that like a real like attention to detail really stands out to people, because it shows a level of effort that I think maybe historically had been more common. But I don't know, I wasn't around 50 years ago, but I just like to assume that at some point, people really were on point, with everything that they were doing. But at the end of the day, I think it's about just trying to look at the world around you. And it could be that an employee in a different department brings you like, hey, like this is really what's like annoying me about my job. Like sometimes it doesn't always have to relate to everything that you're doing. And, you sit through, you chat with them, you understand what their problem is, why they think it can be better. And then you try to come up with some solution that works. But basically just like never stop pitching yourself, because by pitching yourself and pitching your ideas out there, you're putting yourself in front of management constantly, and you're always showing them that you're willing to think of new ideas, think differently. You're always there to try to improve the business, that you're in. And I might be a little bit different in some cases. Like there's probably plenty of chances I could have left either of my last two companies, but I decided like I'm going to stick out these rides because there's as much value in the good times as there are the bad times, basically. And I'm not a quitter. So just, even when times like weren't great, and that happens in every single job in the planet, we're humans, we go through cycles, whether it's the economy, our bodies, our digestive system, or otherwise, like everything comes in cycles. And it's not just, my strategy is just don't get too far down and don't get too far up. Try to sort of be like as level as possible. And I think it often like frustrates people, candidly, because I'll like sit in meetings, with important people, and they'll say something and they're like expecting some reaction, from me. And I just sit there very calm, cool, collected, don't move my facial expressions, all that much, but, take in information. And then there's other little things like bring a notebook with you when you go to meetings, look like you're taking notes, whether you are or not. I don't know that anyone will ever know. And I think I've seen people actually taking notes and seen a lot of people not actually, taking notes. But it's these like little things that I think like add up over time. And my mentality in this company, in the last company, or wherever I'll go next, is always that small wins turn into bigger wins, and big wins turn into even bigger ones. So you got to start small, focus on things that you can control, win each day, to win each week, to win each month, to win each year. You don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's a process, and wanting to sort of absorb, be a part of, and really try to make the most of that process I think is how we can all become more well-rounded, which is something I've really appreciated from startups, because whether it's telehealth to NFTs to now robotics, these are all things I knew nothing about, candidly, when I joined the company. But being in a startup means that you're working with a small team. And, with a small team, you've got to do all the same things that a company 10 times your size needs to be able to do. And so you're pushed in all these different directions. You're constantly out of your comfort zone, and you constantly feel like, you're treading water, trying to figure out, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, I've never done this before. And you just have to be okay with that, to a certain extent. Like, have confidence in yourself. Like, you're a smart person, trust that you're doing the right thing. Yeah, make sure you do some research. Like, I'm not saying don't do research and try to find best practices and see how other people have done it. But at the end of the day, that's the beauty of the startup to me, is that you just get to push yourself in so many different directions, learn new things, be a part of things you never thought you'd ever be a part of. And really just, work with a great team who's as passionate as you are about what you're doing, and see where the journey takes you.
You have stared over the proverbial cliff, and you have gone down it on the proverbial window washing cart, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the basket. I'm also scared. I'm also scared of heights, so I hope I don't ever have to go on a basket.
Right. So you have been there, and you've seen that it can work out, and you have expanded your tolerance for, I don't want to say risk necessarily, but just for all of the crazy bits of chaos that startup life offers, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, and that's half the battle, is being in the grind with a team, regardless of what you're working on. Because you won't find that sort of passion and dedication and willingness to sort of like grow and push yourself as an individual and collectively from a company that, has 10,000, 20,000 employees. People go in, get their job done, go home, and enjoy their life, or their perspective of enjoying life, at least. And I think that, there's a limited time frame where we all can, like, physically push ourselves. When I'm 60 years old, 70 years old, I don't imagine I'm going to be able to work the same number of hours. But like right now, at this point in my life, we can make it happen. We can have big dreams, and we can go chase ambition by trying to do the right thing each day.
I absolutely love that, and I think you're exactly right. It's something that we've heard a few times before, so I know we're kind of running short on time here. I just wanted to ask you a couple quick closing remarks. Is there something that's unusual that you believe that you feel like nobody else believes?
Oh man, I don't think I'm that different. I think that I try to learn as much from myself as I can read online or in books or in speaking with people. But I don't think that there's some unique belief that I have. I think actually the cliche things make a lot of sense, to me. And, I tell my team all the time, all I'm asking of you is to come into work every day with an open mind, positive attitude, and a willingness to get 1% better. Because I really think that, as cliche as that is, again, you don't take leaps and bounds every single day, but you can make small improvements. You can push yourself a little bit in this direction, push yourself in a little bit in that direction. Yeah. So I think, a lot of my spirit really comes back to my high school soccer coach, who despised me and made me run a lot of laps. Because I might have been a little bit overweight, for a soccer player. And he constantly was on me, just telling me to push, get out of your comfort zone, push yourself. And, unfortunately or fortunately, it's like resonated with me, as something, that I believe in. So I don't think that I'm like different or unique, on that front. I don't believe that people have to have gotten 5 degrees to be brilliant. I don't think that people have had to graduate college even to be brilliant and be an asset to you. I don't think that the traditional perspective on how you evaluate a prospective employee, necessarily makes a lot of sense, because there's really smart people in a lot of ways, and it's tough to find really smart people who are willing to come and join you on your journey. because there's so many other journeys they could go on, as well. That I think you just have to be willing to look at people for who they are, and try to really just understand, like, is this person a solution for me? Like, forget about the credentials. Yes, you hope they have some experience, but probably you don't think they're going to be a solution for you without that experience. And just get to know people as best as you can through the interview process. Don't just ask standard questions. Push conversations in different directions and see how people think.
I love it. Well, Ross, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been fascinating to get to know you. Obviously, you're on a rocket ship trajectory forward. I wish you nothing but success. I know you've got a crazy day ahead of you, so I want to be very mindful of your time. But again, thank you so much for joining. And where can people check you out? It's skylinerobotics.com. What's the website?
Yeah, skylinerobotics.com. We've got a LinkedIn, YouTube page that we update somewhat regularly, at least. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you guys want to follow us. We're on a journey to change the way an industry has been done. It's not an easy journey, but we're gonna get to do the right things at each and every day, and I'm gonna learn how to speak in the process as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think you're already there. I love it. It's fantastic. I have no doubt you're doing great. With that, the official podcast is over.